You wake up before your alarm, not because you are disciplined, because your brain never fully rested. The room is still dark. A faint blue glow leaks across the ceiling from the phone beside your bed. Your hand reaches for it before your eyes are even fully open. One notification, then another, then a reel, then a face, then a stranger pretending to be happy at 6:14 in the morning. And without realizing it, you have already left yourself. You tell yourself it is normal. Everyone does it. Everyone scrolls. Everyone checks. Everyone disappears into that glowing rectangle before they become a person for the day. But then, you meet someone who doesn't. No Instagram, no TikTok, no Snapchat, no endless stories documenting breakfast, relationships, workouts, vacations, sadness, loneliness. Nothing. And something about them unsettles you, not because they seem miserable, because they don't. That's the part nobody talks about. Most people secretly assume that people without social media must be socially awkward, disconnected, outdated, lonely. You imagine them sitting in silence while the world moves on without them. But then you actually meet one, and they laugh easily. They maintain eye contact longer than most people can tolerate. They disappear for hours without apologizing for it. And suddenly, the story you believed starts cracking. Because maybe they are not missing something. Maybe they escaped something. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because the moment you meet someone who functions perfectly without social media, you are forced to confront how dependent everyone else has become. Not technologically, psychologically. You think social media is just a tool, but tools do not reshape identity. Tools do not train your nervous system to crave validation every few minutes. Tools do not make silence feel dangerous. That is not a tool anymore. That is architecture, invisible architecture. Most people never notice it because they were born inside it. Your brain slowly adapted to a world where attention became survival. Every notification became a tiny pulse of reassurance. You still exist. You are still being remembered. And the terrifying part is how quickly the human mind can confuse visibility with worth. Your brain is not weak for responding to this. Your brain is ancient. It evolved in tribes, small groups, tiny circles where rejection could mean death. Thousands of years ago, being ignored by the tribe was dangerous. Now, imagine handing that ancient nervous system a device capable of measuring social approval every second. Likes, views, replies, followers, seen receipts. A machine perfectly engineered to trigger social survival instincts over and over again. And most people call this entertainment. But there are people who saw the mechanism clearly and quietly stepped away. Not because they hated technology, because they recognized the cost.
There is an old story about Buddhist monks who used to leave crowded cities and walk into the mountains alone, not to escape humanity, to hear themselves think again. Because constant noise eventually make inner truth impossible to hear. And modern life is noise without interruption. The scroll never ends, the feed never ends, the performance never ends. You finish one video and another appears before your mind even have time to breathe. A perfectly designed psychological conveyor belt. And somewhere along the way, people stopped asking themselves a terrifying question. What do I actually feel when nobody's watching me? That question scares more people than they realize, because many people no longer know. And science explains why. variable reward systems, dopamine loops, behavioral conditioning. But honestly, you have already felt the truth without needing the science. You felt it last night, lying in bed, switching between apps for no reason, not even enjoying it anymore, just moving your thumb again, 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 like your body was searching for something your mind could no longer name. You open the same apps multiple times within minutes, not because there is new information, because uncertainty itself became addictive.
Maybe someone replied, maybe someone noticed you, maybe something happened. And every time nothing appears, there is a tiny, invisible disappointment. So small you barely notice it, but repeated hundreds of times a day, it slowly changes your emotional baseline. This is why silence feels heavier now, why waiting in line feels unbearable, why sitting alone in a room feels itchy, why people panic when their battery reaches 2%. The phone stopped being a device a long time ago. Now it behaves more like an external nervous system. Now imagine this: a quiet cafe late at night, rain sliding slowly across the windows, warm yellow lights reflecting against untouched coffee cups. At one table sits a group of 4 friends, or at least they look like friends. One person is filming the table for a story, another is retaking a photo of the drinks, someone else is replying to messages while pretending to listen. Every few seconds, someone disappears behind a screen. The conversation keeps breaking apart in microscopic ways, tiny fractures. Nobody notices because this has become normal. Now look toward the corner of the cafe. There is another person sitting alone. No phone on the table, no scrolling, no performance, just sitting there quietly watching the rain. At first, it almost looks sad until you realize something strange. They're completely comfortable. No twitching, no checking, no restless reaching for stimulation. Just presence. And suddenly, the lonely person in the room no longer looks lonely. The others do. And that realization hits harder than most people expect. Because many people aren't using social media to connect. They're using it to avoid feeling disconnected from themselves. But people rarely admit this openly. Instead, they negotiate with themselves. I need it for work. I only use it to stay informed. I can stop anytime. And maybe some of that is true. But if it were only a tool, why does deleting it feel emotionally frightening? Why do people reinstall apps after 3 days of silence? Why does posting something and receiving little engagement feel weirdly personal? Think about that. A feature designed entirely around monitoring who observed your existence for a few seconds. And millions of people normalized this. Not because they are stupid, because human beings desperately want to feel seen. You have felt this before. Posting something, closing the app, opening it 6 seconds later, then pretending you were not waiting. And maybe the darkest part is this: most people no longer know where their personality ends and their online identity begins. They curate reactions before experiences even finish happening. A beautiful sunset appears, and part of the brain immediately asks, should I post this? A meal arrives, a concert begins, a vulnerable moment happens, and the mind starts translating reality into content. Not life, content. That changes a person slowly, quietly, until eventually they stop experiencing moments fully because a part of them is always standing outside the moment, observing themselves, performing themselves. This is why some people without social media feel strangely grounded, not superior, grounded. Because they reclaimed something most people accidentally surrendered: unobserved existence. The ability to live without turning every emotion into evidence. But this is deeper than habits, much deeper. The real reason many people cannot leave social media is not addiction to apps. It is fear of disappearance. Because if nobody sees your life, did it happen? If nobody reacts to your thoughts, do they matter? If nobody validates your existence, who are you alone? And this is the identity trap. The brain protects familiar versions of the self, even painful ones. Your online identity may exhaust you. Anxiety may exhaust you. Comparison may exhaust you. But at least it's familiar. Leaving that system can feel strangely similar to social death. Not because you are weak, because your nervous system interprets uncertainty as danger. And this is why people who leave social media completely often appear psychologically strong. Not because they became monks, because they tolerated invisibility long enough to rediscover themselves underneath it. That takes courage, real courage. And there is a quiet tragedy hidden beneath all of this. Years pass faster when every emotion gets diluted into scrolling. Attention fragments, memory fragments, identity fragments. One day, you wake up and realize you spent thousands of hours consuming the lives of strangers while becoming increasingly disconnected from your own. Not dramatically, slowly, like fog filling a room. And the scariest part, most people will never notice it happening in real time, because modern distraction does not destroy people loudly, it dissolves them quietly. But this is not about guilt. Your brain was trying to protect you, trying to keep you connected, visible, safe. That version of you was not pathetic, just afraid of missing out, afraid of irrelevance, afraid of silence, afraid of being forgotten. And honestly, that fear is deeply human. But maybe people without social media discovered something the rest of the world forgot. Maybe peace does not come from being seen by everyone. Maybe peace comes from no longer needing to be. Maybe real confidence is not the ability to attract attention. Maybe it's the ability to remain fully yourself when nobody is looking. To sit in a quiet room without reaching for escape. To experience life directly instead of translating it into performance. To exist without constantly asking the world, "Do I matter?" So here's the question nobody asks enough. If your phone stopped showing you proof that other people noticed you tomorrow, what would remain of your identity? And would you finally meet yourself for the first time?